We love history and everything mysterious that has been left about it. We crave to know more about it, and we will continue our search towards the answers. Our history is filled with historical events and mysteries that might never be solved at all. Historians like to believe there is still hope and that there is an answer to all of our questions. Thanks to them, we know most of the things that have happened in our history. Of course, with so much history and knowledge, there are also some holes that we still cannot entirely explain. Some of the events are a complete mystery to us, and there is a possibility we are never going to know the real truth behind them. There are various historical events that we find extremely hard to explain. This is all due to the lost artifacts, bad maps, and false stories that might have slightly changed our history. The lack of answers is something that makes us know more. Our search for answers is a never-ending story, and it will be as long as we exist. Jack the Ripper, still an unknown identity. We have all heard of Jack the Ripper. He was a person who actually murdered and mutilated a huge number of prostitutes back in 1888. The strange murders made by Jack the Ripper were all over the press. At the time, the politicians only pointed fingers at each other, and the investigation has been polluted many times. Back then, news like this were extremely shocking, and media would often be the best investigator. Name Jack the Ripper comes from the media back in 1888. It was all over the newspaper, and everyone has been talking about it in public. The story of Jack the Ripper is a story that will keep on living forever. His real identity has never been established, but people even today did not stop looking. Everything related to Jack the Ripper is completely open to debate. The material about him is never-ending, and people are still finding new, different suspects. There are various websites that cover all of the information related to Jack the Ripper, even groups formed in order to find the real identity behind this terrible murderer. Jack the Ripper was known for viciously strangling his victims and then laying them down. He would cut the arteries in their throats, but that was not everything. He also removed various body parts of the victims' bodies. It was assumed that Jack the Ripper was actually a doctor, or maybe even a surgeon, because he seemed to have an amazing anatomical knowledge. His cuts were extremely precise, pointing out he really did have something to do with the human body before. There are various different theories related to Jack the Ripper, but we are unlikely to ever know the truth behind all these tragical murders. The entire mystery is extremely fascinating because we can all access the information about him and maybe even help out at solving this awfully long puzzle. The Dancing Plague, continuous dance towards the death. Who would have thought dancing could end up so tragical? Back in 1518, just west of the German border in France, a strange dancing event has occurred, and no one really knows why. The dancing plague lasted for about a month, and most of the affected actually died due to the exhaustion. This strange event happened in July of 1518, when a random woman took out to the street and started dancing. This woman caught the attention of everyone, and soon they all joined her. A week after a week, more and more people joined the woman and her dancing mania. Soon, there were over 400 people continuously dancing on the streets. As dancing became a lot more intense, people became very concerned, and some even looked for help from physicians. Sadly, no one was able to help them. People have suffered from strokes and heart attacks, and many had died due to extreme exhaustion from all the dancing. The interesting thing about the dancing plague is the fact that it was supported by everyone. They built a wooden stage, opened 2 guild halls, and a lot more, just to have enough space to dance to their death. There were also musicians who were paid to play some music, so everyone would enjoy their dance as supposed to. The dancing plague has been a real mystery since that day, and even today there is no actual explanation for this strange event. There are no answers to any of the questions related to it, and we are probably never get to know what made these people dance so much. Never found Cleopatra's tomb. There are many stories of Cleopatra, her beauty, and her lover Mark Antony. Cleopatra is probably one of the most famous people from our history, and most of us heard of her, even as kids. She was a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the last known pharaoh of Egypt. The ancient writers claim that Cleopatra VII was buried together with Mark Antony back in 30 BC. Cleopatra and Antony were lovers who just wanted to be together forever. It is believed that Cleopatra actually committed a suicide 2 weeks after Octavian defeated Antony and invaded Egypt. The writer known as Plutarch claimed that the tomb could be found near the temple of Isis, a beautiful Egyptian goddess. Plutarch also said the tomb would contain gold treasures, silver, pearls, ivory, emeralds, and ebony. Back in 2010, Zahi Hawass, former Minister of Antiquities of Egypt, conducted various excavations at the site found near Alexandria, currently known as Taposiris Magna. The site contained 27 tombs and 10 mummies, all dating back to the era of Cleopatra VII and her ruling of Egypt. Sadly, it was no luck for Hawass. He did not find the tomb he was looking for, and he probably never will. Some theories suggest that Octavian would never let Cleopatra and Antony get buried in such a great manner, while others believe he was not as heartless, considering he let Cleopatra make a funeral for her Antony after his tragic defeat. Some archaeologists claim that even if we would find Cleopatra's tomb now, it would probably be very heavily plundered and completely unidentifiable. The mysterious lost treasure of the Copper Scroll. Everyone likes treasures. No matter where we mention a treasure, someone will go ahead and try to find it. People have a thing for treasures, and aside from all the curiosity, there are various treasures that might actually make a difference. This extraordinary cache is named the Copper Scroll, and it has been found on March 14th, 1952. At Qumran, it is believed that this scroll is actually a lot different than other documents found in the Qumran library. The scrolls found at Qumran library are usually written on papyrus or parchment, but this one is special. It was written on a metal that is copper mixed with 1% tin. As metal corrodes throughout the years, the scroll could not be unrolled at all. For that reason, the archaeologists actually cut it into 23 strips and pieced it back together. The language that has been found on the scroll was different from others, and John Marco Allegro had to transcribe the contents of it right away. Not only this scroll seems to be from an unusual material, it also has a lot of things written on it. The results of John Marco Allegro pointed out at something amazing. The scroll itself is unique and unlike other scrolls. It was not a work, it was a list. A list contains 64 locations where a treasure of silver and gold could be found. Along with silver and gold, it is said the treasure contains vessels and maybe some other scrolls too. The estimated number of treasures that could be found goes up to tons. There are over 4,600 treasures that have been listed on this mysterious scroll, which means if anyone ever finds it, it will be over $1 billion worth. This mysterious scroll had started many treasure hunts right away, but it was all useless considering the scroll required intimate knowledge of the obscure references. Everyone who tried to find the treasures returned empty-handed. No one has found any treasure mentioned in the scroll, and we probably never will, but the search continues. Maybe if you feel like it, you could give it a try. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, reality or a myth? The ancient writers describe them as a series of beautiful gardens that have been constructed at the ancient Babylon city. No one really knows the exact time when these gardens could have been built, but many seem to be impressed by the gardens and they believe they are a wonder of the world. One of the texts claims that the gardens were built by a Babylonian emperor, Nebuchadnezzar, for his lovely wife, Amytis. Back in 250 BC, Philo of Byzantium wrote about the Hanging Gardens, saying the plants were cultivated at a height that was above ground level. Throughout the years, many archaeologists have tried to find the Hanging Gardens. They even excavated Babylon, and they were still not able to find any of the remains of this beautiful garden. Just when we all thought the Hanging Gardens were just a myth, an interesting story appeared by a researcher who has spent over 20 years looking for the location of the gardens. 2013, Stephanie Daly from the University of Oxford proposed that the gardens were located at the Assyrian city, Nineveh. Dr. Daly managed to combine the ancient maps with today's versions of the maps to finally locate this famous place. Dr. Daly also says that Nineveh is actually New Babylon and that we have been looking at the wrong place for the entire time. Sadly, past 2 decades, these zones have been suffering a lot of damage from looting and war. so it is very unlikely we are ever going to find these beautiful gardens. If the hanging gardens really did exist, we hope to find them someday. From the descriptions, these were something we have never seen before. That was 5 unexplained events from history. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.